You think you chose your personality. You didn't. The way you react to criticism, the reason you shut down in crowded rooms, the reason you crave approval even from people you don't respect, none of it was your decision, but the real answer is far stranger than anything you've been told, because the personality you call yours was built by dead people, by environments that no longer exist, by threats your brain still treats as real, even though they vanished 10,000 years ago. And the science is starting to prove it. Psychologists have spent decades trying to map human personality. The most widely accepted framework, known as the Big Five, identifies 5 core dimensions: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. You've probably taken a version of this test. You've probably nodded along at the result and thought, yes, that's me. That's just who I am. But these aren't descriptions of your choices. They are ancient survival tools wearing modern clothing. Take neuroticism. If you score high on it, you probably feel anxiety more often than you'd like. You catastrophize. You replay conversations at 2 a.m. You rehearse arguments that will never happen. Researchers used to treat this as a flaw, a disorder, a malfunction in an otherwise rational system. It isn't a flaw. Evolutionary psychologist Daniel Nettle, in his research on personality and natural selection, argues that neuroticism, one of the most successful traits in human evolutionary history. The anxious ancestor wasn't weak. The anxious ancestor survived. They spotted the predator before anyone else did. They planned for the worst before it arrived. Their brain ran constant threat simulations so their body could respond in half a second when it mattered. You inherited that brain, the tightness in your chest before a difficult conversation. That is the same system your ancestors used to survive a drought. Same wiring, different stage. The hardware hasn't changed. Only the threats have, but it goes far deeper than stress responses. Extroversion, the degree to which you seek stimulation, social interaction, and novelty, isn't a personality choice you made somewhere along the way. It is a foraging strategy. In environments where resources were scarce and scattered across vast distances, extroverted individuals were more likely to explore beyond familiar territory, form alliances with strangers, and discover new food sources before others did. Researcher Robert Cloninger spent years mapping what he called the reward-dependent system, the neurological engine that drives you towards social bonding, novelty, and external stimulation. Extroverts, he found, have more sensitive dopamine pathways. Their brains reward social contact more intensely. That wasn't random variation. That was selection pressure across thousands of generations. Your brain gives you a chemical reward for making friends because your ancestors died without them. Let that settle for a moment. Now here's where it gets strange. Research by behavioral geneticist Robert Plomin, who spent over 40 years studying twins across multiple countries, suggests that somewhere between 40 and 60% of the variation in human personality is genetic, not learned, not chosen, inherited. Twins raised in completely different households by different parents in different cultures end up with remarkably similar personalities, same levels of openness, same social threshold, same humor, same fears. The environments were different. The personalities converged anyway. You didn't build your personality. You were handed it at the cellular level, but the environment didn't disappear from the equation. The genetic blueprint is the structure. What activates each trait, what turns the volume up or down on each dimension, is your developmental environment. The level of threat you experienced in childhood, the stability or instability of your early bond, whether the adults around you were consistent or unpredictable, whether the world felt safe or not. This is what psychologists call the diathesis stress model. You arrive with predispositions. The world decides how loudly they express themselves. If you grew up in a high-threat environment, your nervous system calibrated for danger. Your cortisol response became more reactive. Your attachment patterns shifted toward anxiety or avoidance. Your brain rewired its baseline assumptions about how trustworthy other humans are, not because something went wrong with you, because your brain was doing exactly what a brain is supposed to do, learning the rules of the world it landed in and preparing your body to survive inside it. That calibration once kept humans alive on the African savanna. Now it causes panic attacks in traffic. There is another layer to this that most people have never considered. Your personality is not just a product of your individual evolutionary history. It is a product of group dynamic, of the tribe itself, anthropologist Christopher Bain, in his research on ancestral human social structures, found that early human bands were remarkably egalitarian, not because people were naturally cooperative at their core, but because individuals who became too dominant were collectively suppressed by the group. Too much aggression and the group pushed back. Too much selfishness and you lost your alliances. The personalities that survived weren't always the strongest or the most ruthless. They were the ones that fit the social niche available within their particular group. Your agreeableness, how much you accommodate others, how conflict-averse you are, how quickly you smooth tensions before they escalate, is partially the echo of a 10,000-year social sorting process. Humans who couldn't cooperate were removed from the gene pool, not always by predators, by other humans. You want to be liked because the ones who didn't survive long enough to have descendants. Think about your own personality right now. Think about the trait that causes you the most difficulty in modern life. Maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's impulsivity, maybe it's the hypervigilance, the constant scanning of social situations for signs that someone is upset with you. Now ask yourself, in a different environment, what would that trait have been worth? The anxious person would have been the lookout. The impulsive person would have been the one who crossed the river first when the group needed food. The hypervigilant person would have been the one who noticed the change in animal behavior before the storm arrived. Every trait that cost you something today was paying someone something yesterday. That is not a metaphor. That is the behavioral fossil record of your species. Modern psychology is only beginning to catch up to what evolutionary science has been demonstrating for decades. The idea that personality is freely chosen or that it reflects your discipline and your decisions is one of the most persistent myths in human self-understanding. Your introversion is not a failure of confidence. Your sensitivity is not a character defect. Your tendency to overthink is not a waste of intelligence. They are ancient technologies running on modern hardware in a world they were never designed for. And here's the part that most people find genuinely unsettling. Your personality was shaped by forces older than civilization, forces you had no say in. Then who exactly is making your decisions right now? Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio spent years studying individuals with damage to the prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain most associated with rational decision-making. What he found reshaped how science thinks about choice. Without access to emotional memory, to the deep encoded signals of past experience, these patients couldn't make simple decisions. They couldn't choose what to eat for lunch. They would sit at a menu for an hour and genuinely not be able to decide. The rational mind, it turns out, does not override emotion. It consults it every single time. The emotion is the filing system. The rational mind is just the librarian. Your personality is the archive your brain searches before every decision you make. Your choices feel like yours, but they are drawn from a library that was written before you were born, revised by every environment you have passed through, and executed by a nervous system that still isn't entirely sure the danger is gone. You think you chose your personality. You didn't, but now, for the first time in the entire history of your species, you can look at it clearly. You can trace the evolutionary logic embedded in your anxiety, your social hunger, your need for belonging, your fear of rejection. You can understand why your brain does what it does and where that behavior was forged. And in that understanding, something shifts, not the personality, the relationship to it. The traits are still there, ancient, inherited, calibrated by pressures you will never fully see, but now you are the one holding the map.